who was the first Olympic athlete to be stripped of their gold medals?
I think a bunch of people have lost their medals for doping violations, but I'm not sure who was first.
Well, in this case, it wasn't about doping at all. The reasons were much more controversial. But let me give you a hint. Have you ever heard the story or maybe seen the picture of the guy with the two different track shoes on?
Yeah, I remember that picture.
Yeah, well, that's the legendary Native American athlete Jim Thorpe at the 1912 Olympics that were held in Stockholm, Sweden, just after he won the decathlon.
Wait, you're telling me that the guy that won an Olympic race showed up to compete with mismatched shoes?
No. He definitely showed up with matching shoes, but that's why this story is interesting.
Okay, do tell.
So Jim Thorpe was considered a major underdog at these Olympics. I mean, these events were designed for Europeans, and Jim had not even been trained in many of them. So as these games went on, and he was pulling ahead of all the other contestants, by the time they got to this final event of the decathlon, he was so far ahead that he only had to place 7th to win the gold. But somebody tried to make sure that didn't happen.
Ooh, is this like a Nancy Kerrigan thing? Did somebody take a swing at his knees?
Kind of. But instead of going for his knees, they went for his shoes. So Jim went to the locker room to gear up for the final event, which was the 1,500-meter run, and his shoes were gone. To this day, nobody knows who took them.
Okay, that stinks. But clearly he didn't have a Nike endorsement and a bunch of shoes in a bag, and he couldn't run in his socks, so how on earth did he run the race?
Well, so he searched the locker room, and he finds one shoe in the trash can, and then ends up running out of the building and finds a burn barrel, turns it over, and out falls another shoe. One is too big, one is too small. He doubles up some socks for the big one, puts on a dress sock for the small one, and gets these shoes on with literally only seconds to spare before the race begins.
Holy crap. I don't think I could run around the block like that, and you're telling me he won an Olympic race.
Yeah, he finished first in the race, but 50 feet ahead of the silver medalist in the decathlon.
Whoa. Okay, so winning a gold at the Olympics is a big deal. And then there's this. I can't think of winning in a more dramatic fashion.
Yeah, you're not the only one that thought that. The King of Sweden, who awarded these medals in person, told Jim, "Sir, you are the greatest athlete in the world." And Jim responded, "Thanks, King."
So this guy comes in, sweeps all the events, wins 2 gold medals against all odds, and overcoming even some shady sabotage. Well, he must have returned home to a hero's welcome.
He did, but that didn't last long, because shortly after he returned home, news of a scandal broke that cast doubt on whether Jim was eligible to participate in the Olympic Games in the first place.
Now we come to one of the sport's greatest tragedies. When you returned to the United States, you were called a professional after that 1912 Olympic meet. Why was that, Jim?
Well, I had played baseball down in North Carolina Eastern League. Mm-hmm. And it was, I received expense money on my vacation time, so I figured that I didn't play professional ball on account of the money that was in it, but I had money of my own.
You had no idea that you were...
I didn't think I was doing anything wrong.
Okay, hold up. So him playing baseball happened before he went to the Olympics?
Correct.
And then after he's won them, he takes his Olympic medals home. Then his eligibility was questioned because of some expense money he got during summer vacation.
That's right. Although to be clear, what little money he earned for playing in that summer league didn't even go to him. It was paid to the boarding school that sent him to play baseball in the first place, according to historian Bob Wheeler.
Well, that doesn't sound like a typical professional sports salary situation.
It wasn't, because technically he was a ward of the government assigned to the summer leagues. And the American Athletic Union, after hearing the reported claim, they made the official decision to retroactively change Jim's status to professional.
Oh, okay. That's not good. They had to be an amateur to compete in the Olympics.
That's right. And it compelled, in turn, the International Olympic Committee to disqualify Jim, so he was no longer the winner of his events. That's why you heard Jim say in this recording that he had to give his medals back.
Oh, that's a huge reversal.
Yeah, this was devastating to Jim.
I imagine to all of Indian country, he was a hero.
Very true. And to that point, many Native American leaders have said that to keep Jim's records removed from the history books is to continue the erasure of Native peoples.
I'll admit, given how exciting all this started, this just isn't how I was expecting the story to end. That's kind of sad.
Well, it's not over.
Well, wait, I thought he died in March of, 1953? So what am I missing?
Well, before Jim died, there was a widely publicized movement to overturn the IOC decision and restore his medals.
But how could that be possible given the claims against Jim's eligibility?
According to the Swedish Olympic rules for the 1912 Games, any challenge to a competitor's eligibility had to be raised within 30 days. But the AAU and the IOC didn't take any action against Jim for 196 days.
Oh, whoa. That's like way overdue. That's not cool. Like, they broke their own rules to punish Jim for supposedly breaking the rules or not being eligible. If they claim he was not strictly eligible according to the spirit of amateur versus professional athletics, then shouldn't it matter to strictly follow the rule book for challenging his amateur status?
Yeah, it should. But there's one more thing. There were other Olympic athletes during that same period who were openly known to compete in the off-season for money as well, but under false names, so they could skirt that issue of the rules that were used against Jim.
Okay, so Jim was penalized for being honest.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing it wasn't only that, maybe also because he wasn't white.
Well, the history books certainly don't spell it out that way.
Well, but given the facts, it looks like Jim was treated differently than others. I mean, you mentioned these other athletes.
That's right.
Well, then what you're describing is an example of selective rule enforcement, right? The people in charge exercise their discretion to apply those rules where they see fit, which honestly is the hallmark of institutional racism.
The strange thing is, in 1973, the AAU retroactively restored Jim's amateur status for the years 1908 to 1912.
Okay, wow. I mean, but why? I mean, that's a good thing, but what motivated that?
Well, to be clear, it was a controversial and unpopular decision when it happened. But by 1973, the prevailing thought amongst AAU board members, due in no small part to the external pressures, was that the decision needed to be reversed.
So did Jim get his medals back? Like the AAU amateur status ruling, that was the whole original reason for the IOC's actions, right?
Yeah, and in a sense, yes, he did get his medals back, but 30 years after he died, and they were just replicas. The originals had been stolen, so they created replicas and presented them to the surviving children.
Well, that's definitely too late, like years too late to feel great about, but the records were restored, things went back as they should be?
No. So the AAU only had the power to restore his amateur athletic status, but giving his Olympic wins back would be the responsibility of the IOC. They did reinstate his name in the winners list, but they have him listed as a co-champion.
That's not right. That's not even close to what happened.
And your feeling is shared by a very distinguished list of individuals, including Damon Runyon, a famous sports and society writer, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, President of the United States, Branch Rickey, the general manager of the Brooklyn Dodgers who integrated baseball and put Jackie Robinson on the field. Gerald Ford, another president of the United States. I mean, 2 former U.S. presidents have lobbied for this change. Then in 1982, the Jim Thorpe Foundation made an attempt.
So the IOC has resisted every appeal to set the record straight.
So far, yes, but there have been some new developments. This past July 2020, a Native American-led organization by the name of Bright Path Strong launched a new petition for the IOC to consider.
Okay, another petition, but how is that enough?
Well, to begin with, it shows that there is still public support for overturning it. But what has always been needed, the linchpin if you will, is having the right leadership inside the IOC who are willing to think about things differently and consider these claims in a new light.
Yeah, that makes sense. You can't only push from the outside. Something's got to give from the inside.
That's right, and that is precisely what Bright Path Strong is hoping for. There is currently a substantial effort within the ranks of the IOC from Anita de France, an African-American woman and IOC vice president, to once again bring the issue of Jim's Olympic record before the committee.
Well, it definitely deserves to be considered seriously by the IOC, because if the question of eligibility was resolved, and that was the only reason for stripping Jim of his wins in the first place, then there's no legitimate reason or excuse for not restoring Jim Thorpe's official record as sole champion in those events. Like, what do those replacement medals even mean? The gold medal did not represent a tie, right? There was nobody even close at the finish line, only Jim. So if they're honestly trying to fix the mistakes of the past, then they got to do the whole job. And that includes revising these, crucial words in the Olympic history books, right? That make it totally clear that Jim Thorpe was the world's greatest athlete. He didn't share that victory with anyone. It was his alone.
Not only do I agree with you, but there has always been some form of public protest demanding justice. And I suspect there always will be until the IOC does the right thing.